Hello and welcome, beautiful friends. We are here once again. I'm with the amazing Dr. Joy Bell. Hello, Dr. Joy. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's going to be a good one.
It is going to be a good one. We're going to talk about how healers heal. And you and I are both in the healing, I hate to say business, but that really is what we do. You know, you do it your way, I do it mine. And so I'm going to share with our viewers how a little bit, or I'm going to have you share how you heal people and help people heal and get their lives together. And I'll definitely mention a little bit about what I do. But I want to start with you. Would you start by letting us know, what do you do to help people put their lives back together?
I have such an awesome gift of responsibility and opportunity to work with families every day. So, Grace Space works with families and kiddos with ADHD that are struggling in many different spaces. Sometimes, Teresa, that's at school, sometimes it's at home. And one of the things that's very important to our approach and our framework is really looking at the whole entire family
Mhm.
system and helping the family to recognize what's going on in the pool, in the ecosystem that's there. And
Mhm.
so it goes way beyond teaching just skills. It really goes to the areas of mental health, to nutritional wellness, all the different
Mm.
spaces. So we utilize at Gray Space a holistic approach. I think that's where the healing part comes in. I spend a
Mhm.
lot of time with families individually, some of them in their homes, really just
Mhm.
helping them to navigate a lot of the emotional pieces that are generally aligned when there's been a long-term challenges in the family, and specifically when there's been one child. There's always one. I think I might have been that one in my family. I'm a middle
No
child,
way.
Teresa.
No.
Can you not tell? But there's
No.
always one that gets a lot of the attention, but that doesn't mean that that child is broken. So it's really helping families take a look through the lens of themselves, their own history, their own what they're bringing to the table, into the conversation, and then utilizing that in this healing process as well.
Okay. So I mean, and what's different from you, because I know when we had a conversation and we met, you explained that you go beyond just the person who's dealing with the difficulties. You like to take everything in consideration. You actually even go into the homes and do a consult, if that's correct. So you
Absolutely.
really take it and you break it down. And for those who are joining us, I would love for you to please post any questions that you have, because we really want to empower you guys today. This is a very special segment because we are dealing with people who are in healing
Mm.
kind of roles, whether you're a pastor or a counselor or a teacher and law enforcement. I mean, there's so many different roles, Dr. Joy, that um, are maybe underserved, when it comes to their mental health and their strengthening and the processing and all that. So thank you for sharing what you do. I think a lot of people know, but a lot of people also don't know that I am actually a pastor. So I've been in the counseling world for years. Even all the way back to 2009. But the truth is that if I go back to my childhood, Dr. Joy, I don't know about you, but I could actually really track it all the way back to my childhood, giving advice, and maybe not always the best advice, because I don't know how much wisdom I had back then, but it's always been an inclination of mine to counsel people. So the counseling goes with the pastoring and just the coaching that I do. And so, one of the things that I really want to do in this segment is help people through a very transparent, almost, with some guidelines, because we've got to preserve some of our confidentiality of ourselves. But a lot of times people don't understand that people who are in healing roles
Mhm.
also have to heal.
Yes.
And sometimes you will be helping someone heal and you'll be processing your own brokenness at the same time. What's been your experience with that?
One of the things, it's interesting that you said that, and we've had so many great conversations, but I really, really love working with teenagers and those who are sort of in college spaces, because there was so much personally for me during that season of my life so much confusion. I was lost in many ways. And so I was just grappling for direction. And
Mhm.
so I'm really drawn to those kiddos because I understand, not at I've read a book level, or I've gone to a great conference level, but I understand what it feels like to want to get to a space and not know how to get there. I
Mm.
know what it's like to have many, many, many thoughts, like, in terms of our kiddos with ADHD, and really, really a lot happen in there, but still be a brilliant mind. And you have to just have
Mhm.
someone there to help you access that. And so for me personally, I'm able to relate to them because there's parts of that story that I can I mean, if I can go back there like what was the movie with Michael J. Fox where they transported back in time, and then I can
Back
immediately
to the Future. Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
can go back to the future in a second when I
Yeah.
sit down with a
Mm.
family or with a kiddo. It's like I know what that is, and I know how to help
Mhm.
you navigate that. And so I have an opportunity to do that every single day. I also have an opportunity to look at the pressures on a marriage. When I grew up, I have a lot of that history of, like, when there's a lot of difficulties and a lot of stress, that's very difficult. So that's why we don't just work with the kids, because the whole family is impacted. And when we're
Mhm.
under stress, Teresa, you know this. I mean, because this is what you do as counseling. When we're under stress, we're all in a fight, flight, or freeze mode, and we don't
Yes.
always make good decisions, right?
Yeah. 100%. It's very important that people know, once again, that when you're in the healing, role, etc., the healers need healing themselves. And so, one of the great things that you brought up is how you can relate to so many of those situations that so many people encounter. Which that's actually what makes counselors great, when you have um, been there, when you have actually experienced it, etc. But in those times, Dr. Joy, you run into times when you have to face some healing. I remember being in a session one day years ago, and I was dealing with it was a marital issue. And I remember thinking for a moment, I've never thought this before. I've been counseling for years and I've never thought this before. But I had this moment where I had this thought that just came at me, and I was like, I'm going to have a breakdown.
Mm,
And it came out of nowhere.
mm,
And I said to a friend who's also, she's a counselor. We actually went together to school and got our masters together, but I was already counseling before the masters. The masters was really just to kind of prove to myself I knew I could do it.
yeah.
Um, and I said, that's it. I'm not counseling anybody anymore. I'm out. She said, I think you just need a sabbatical. I said, nope, we're closing down shop. We are not doing this
We're done.
again.
It's
We're
over.
done. Don't nobody call me. Don't ask me for anything right now. And so I actually did step away for a little bit.
Mm,
I stepped away, which I'd never done before. And I just had to kind of just give myself some time to process things,
mhm,
because a lot of times there's things that you don't even know. That's why they tell you, if you're going to be counseling, make sure you deal with your stuff. But I have this thought, and maybe you can give me your own thoughts, because we don't have to agree on everything, and that's
no,
okay.
I'd love to
You're
hear
in your
that.
world and I'm in mine. People, they tell you, make sure you get your own healing, blah blah blah. I,
Mm,
I agree to some degree,
mhm.
but at the same time, it's not like all your issues are going to surface all in one season of life. So what do you think about that? Like, have you seen those spread out issues that come about?
Let me tell you something. My therapist always says, because I'm an A-type personality, one of the things that has bounded Teresa and I is that we have similar personality structures. And I'm like, well, why couldn't I have dealt with this when I was 22 instead of 50? And I'm
Right.
saying, because and I could have, then I would have. And I
Right.
love what she says, in that it's almost like God's graciousness of allowing things to come up when you are ready. A lot of
Mhm.
times and so to answer your question, or to piggyback on it, yes, I believe that there's a lot of things you can deal with ahead of time because you know what they are, but then
Mhm.
some things are just, I think, in your DNA. And some memories have been suppressed, some things that you haven't thought about in
Yeah.
years. So you're like, I'm good. Like, I'm good, until
Yeah.
someone says something, you smell something, there's a
Yeah.
color, there's a location, and you're like, oh, maybe I have not worked through that this is an opportunity. So I
That's right.
absolutely wholeheartedly agree with you that yes, we want to be responsible because we are in a space, me, and I said this when we met last time. I always tell families, I may feel like a therapist, but my liability insurance does not cover that. So I will
Right.
just send you to a
Right.
therapist. But it's the relational, the care that they're sensing. But if there's
Right.
something that comes up for me, I can't say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Because when I was 12, like this is I would and it's like, wait, this is not your time to work through your stuff. That's a copay with your therapist. So
Right.
while we want to be responsible when we're in these types of roles of dealing with as much as we can, we also have to recognize that some things we put in the back of our mind, or we compartmentalize, and we may have a trigger that we're not expecting, and be willing at
Yeah.
that point to do what we need to do.
That's right. Or we may have just convinced ourselves, because I've noticed this, especially as a pastor, you kind of learn behavior in people that they learn to just, and this is a church thing, right? This is very specifically a faith thing, where church people are taught that you just forgive everything, forgive and just throw it under the rug. So you convince yourself that you forgave it because you put yourself in the position to say, I forgave something, therefore I'm healed and I've forgotten it.
Mhm.
And it's not true. A lot of times, excuse me, a lot of times it's not true. And so I think that's very important. One of the things that I want to touch on besides the counselor. So this topic, for those of you who are watching, thank you so much. We're excited that you're on here. Make sure you post any questions that you have for myself or Dr. Bell, because we are taking on the healers need healing today. And so we welcome those questions. Sometimes I will say this, a lot of times when people are in the healing world, they feel ashamed or embarrassed that they would need healing. Have you ever dealt with that?
Yeah, I think again, apps hands down, right? And you and I talked about this a little bit, a couple months ago, that sometimes certain personality types, I'll just use mine, and a lot of people that I work with are in the same box of, yes, this happened when I was 12, but I have 3 degrees, I've raised great kids, I have a great marriage, I've done the thing, I'm good. And you're like, no, you're not. You've just been very, very productive in your life.
Oh,
And
goodness.
in many ways, for me, the way that I function is very compartmentalized, right? So it's like
Yeah.
a sort of
Yes.
that
Yeah.
part, that part is another part. But this
Yes.
is like the other part that I've been able to. So we were laughing. I was talking with you one day, and I was like, I think it was probably about 10 years ago. And I thought I was watching something, and they were talking about like the indicators of trauma and how they show up, and like if you have these three, then you really need to get some help. That's like, what, I got 10. And like I didn't even think, you know what I mean? I was just like, wait, I had
Yeah.
trauma. Like it's so
That's
like
funny.
Joy Bell, like just like
Yeah.
me, because the evidence, or sort of the fruit of your life looks so
Yeah.
beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And so people think, how can you understand any of this?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Goodness.
So I don't know if that answers your question. So absolutely.
No, that is so powerful. I'm gonna tell you why. Because when you were talking, I said, "Of course," because I'm the same way. I can compartmentalize. Like, I will show up with a smile. I had some really disappointing news several weeks ago about something, and I was moderating a political event, and I mean, most people who knew what had already happened, they were like, "I'm sorry, whatever," and I was like, "We're about to have some fun here, real quick. Put on the show and put on the face and move on, because that's what we do." But because that type A personality, number one. So if some of you are in the healing world and you deal with this, understand that don't let your productivity deceive you.
Ooh, that's so
And
good.
that's what you were saying. I just put some words to it. I mean, that is what it is, because we who are used to doing this, we're used to taking on challenges, we're used to being leaders, we're used to being front runners, like we're at the front row, and you just learn to be productive,
Mhm.
and it will hide often pains and traumas, disappointments, places that you have not visited and that you need to visit. And so for me personally, faith is at the center of it all. I heal through my faith and through people who are empowered and wise to help me. But a lot of times, people who are in positions such as parents, and I wanted to bring this up because with your field, listen, as parents, and I'm going to say this, even I have 3 children and 2 grandbabies, by the way, Dr. Joy. I have 2
How
grandbabies.
did I
Okay.
miss this? Like, I missed
Yeah.
this. There's no way that you're the grandmama to anyone. Keep going. Don't
Well,
distract.
they call me Sweet Tea. So let's stick with Sweet Tea. Okay. So
Oh,
now if they really wanted to call me grandma, I'm not going to take that from them, but we go by Sweet Tea. And so, you know, when you raise children and you run into traumatic events with your children and hard things, and this could even apply to teachers,
mm,
people who deal with children, you might also need some healing and
mm.
to process your own, right? I mean, what do you say to that?
No, I do. I used to serve as head of school, principal in those roles. And a lot of times, part of my job was to help, to sit in the seat between sometimes parents and teachers and sort of advocate for the children the same way similar to what I do now and sort of advocating. But I think one of the things that I realized early on, let's say, for example, you have an educator, and let me say this, Miss Lusk, I am a teacher supporter. I am not a teacher basher. This is a tough, tough job.
Right.
But a lot of times the lens at which that we deal with kids is sort of our lens. Let's say, for example, we grew up and it's like, what are you crying for? Like you're like suck it up. Like right. So now you're a
Mhm.
teacher and you're like, there's nothing here that's wrong. Like I need you to like all your friends are, they're okay, but that's nothing to do with that child. That has everything to do with how potentially you were raised to not acknowledge your feelings. You want a 5-year-old to
Mhm.
say, I'm sad because I fell and I'm bleeding. You don't want them to be like,
Mhm.
toughen it up. Like, let's just get it together. But maybe
Yeah.
that's your lens. And we talked a little bit about a good friend of mine, Mia Imbro, that talks about her platform is what's on your souls. I love taking that and then giving her credit for it because what we're bringing in a lot of times to our spaces, teaching, coaching, pastoring, in all the spaces that you're dealing with humans and you're not behind a computer with data, then you're
Yeah.
likely having some sort of opportunity to be a soft place for people. We
Mhm.
have to always think to ourselves, what am I bringing to this? Like what lens? Sometimes I'll flip it for you, Teresa, is that sometimes we're really empathetic. It's like, oh my gosh, like that little girl. When I was a little girl, like the boys were not kind. So I'm going to give this little girl everything she ever
Yeah.
needed because
Yeah.
I didn't have it. So
Right.
again, it's still through the lens of some sort of experience that
Mhm.
we bring with on our souls to spaces, SOLES. And so we have to be open to when we're in spaces and in environments and occupations that involve
Mhm.
this connection that's needed, that we're like, okay, was that me? Or is that like what my mama told me when I was 12? And so now I'm making, or if I'm a parent, like
Right.
my children, I told you, they're going to be in therapy about something. They say I'm a good mom and I love them and everything. But I know they're going to be in therapy about something I've done. But I've had my own bents, but some of those were because of my own history,
Yeah.
and then not seeing them as like just the humans that they are. So I just think as
Right.
long as we keep that at the front of our mind when we're making decisions, when we're interacting, when we're coaching, when we're advising, that is this about that person or is this about me?
That's right. That's right. I think we don't really. I personally think that we, as healing people, people who are in the healing ministry or call, um, we don't have the empathy for ourselves.
Mm,
I feel like, and definitely for myself, because I
mm,
mean, I've had to. I'm a leader. I get to be a leader. I don't say I have to be. I get to be a leader. That is such an honor. It's such a call. It's wonderful, but it also has a pretty high price. If I listed everything that my life entails and has entailed
mm.
and said, would you like to take over, most people would say
No.
no. They really would, because I don't
Yeah.
just I don't disclose all the other intricacies of the failures, of the trauma, of the disappointments, of the bad choices, of the redemptions, blah blah blah, and it's all a beautiful work in the end. But I think that empathy is one of the things that lacks. And you and I have talked about this because our generation, we grew up with that suck it up buttercup kind of thing. And I don't know about you, but I've passed that on a little bit to my kids. And listen, it's an unfortunate thing.
Mm,
And to some degree, I'm still a little bit like, come on, we can't sit there forever. Like there has to be a balance. We can't forever, cry about everything. There does have to be some kind of strengthening of your spirit, of your soul,
mm,
etc. But for those who are in these roles, whether you're a police officer, maybe even lawyers, can we talk about that? Like, you hear stuff that we don't know anything about. Mediators, like, if we start breaking this down, we could go through a ton of fields that most people in these fields would not even, judges, they would not even think maybe they need a little help, because they're like, no, I mean, this is just what I do. I uphold the law, I take care of the law, whatever. But what about that empathy of, you've been through something? You've been through something. And what is that something? And, a lot of times, this is one of the things that I love to work with people who are going through grief, because I understand that so very well. And now I do. Before I was like, what's wrong with me? Now I'm like, oh, that's grief, right? People sometimes are grieving some of the situations that they've encountered, don't even know it. They begin to lose that desire, that hope, that get up and go kind of thing. And they think they're just losing passion. No, sometimes it's deep rooted grief and unprocessed stuff. What do you think about that?
No, I do. There's a wheel that I'll use, a feeling wheel, that I'll often use with some of my patients clients and or families. Like, oh, I'm mad, but actually mad can actually be sad. It can show up this way. It can show up that way. Grief can show up as anger. Grief can show up as frustration, right? And so sometimes it's just that the language is not there, because we think they're like three emotions. I'm happy, I'm angry, or, something else. But like, there's so many emotions, and they're masked in so many different ways that we don't always have language for. Again, I grew up in a time like you, Teresa, where my mother was not like, let's try to pull up the emotion wheel for us to have this conversation, and let's try to find what exactly is happening here. That didn't happen. It was like, do it. This is what I said. I'm the boss. I'm the older one. I'm the one paying the taxes, right? And so that was really the position. But I think as healers, in that role, and some people may be reluctant, Teresa, I don't know. They're like, oh my gosh, like, don't give me that burden. Well, I think anytime you are engaging with humans and moving them from one space to another, or having to enact justice because of their behavior, you have to recognize that's part of it. That's part of the role that you have, whether or not you have your counsel like Teresa. I'm not a licensed one, but I know that in my work, that's always showing up. The empathy, like, hey, you said this was this, and you were really mad, but I think you were just embarrassed that the teacher keeps calling you every week to come get your child because they're cutting up. That's embarrassment that's showing up in this way. Or you're just really sad, so you're grieving that your child is not who you thought they were, because they're needing more from you. And as a result, you're working hard, and you're frustrating them to get them to a place you thought. You're just grieving that child is not going to maybe go to Harvard. They're going to go somewhere, but you have to readjust your thought. That's grief. But sometimes we take our own grief and we misplace it on others, right? As healers, and also just as humans.
Yes, absolutely. I kind of want to touch on the faith-based part of this, because there's so many pastors. I work with faith leaders in this, because it is something that, especially in the church, I'm just going to keep it real. It's getting a little better, but it's looked down upon. And I'll be honest, this can get a little tricky, because this isn't necessarily a preaching show type thing, but it is. You can't separate me from who I am, and so I deal with these people, and I know a lot of the things that they go through personally, because I'm in that role as well. And a lot of times you get to, people discourage you in the church to get away from that, because they say, well, if you've got Jesus, you've got everything. But Jesus cared about the soul of people. He cared about the intricacies of people's mess ups and their lives. You look at the story of the Samaritan woman, I believe it's in John chapter 4. And, people just, all they focus on is, oh, she was a divorced woman. We don't even know that. We don't know why, I should say. We don't know why that was. But Jesus was really trying to get into the soul portions of her and say, I know the reason why you're doing this. Let's go there, right? And so there's a lot of pastors who deal with a lot of things that they feel ashamed about. I'm sure you've seen the reports, everything going on, blah blah blah, etc. Listen, they're only human who also need help. They
Mhm.
need counseling. They need somebody who's safe, not somebody who's going to say, well, you messed up and look what you did. Now, as long as there's a point of repentance, you can work with anybody. You can help anybody do anything. Now, I don't know if you work with the faith groups, but I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, because you've got you, excuse me, you see the whole picture.
Yeah.
So that has to apply.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Right. So I have the opportunity to work with so many different groups, but I think one of the things I always sort of chuckle about, even when it comes to like, pastors or people, whatever your bent is, like, whatever your stick is, and you're like, that's the thing. I always think, was there trauma in that area for you? Sometimes it's what you're like, oh my gosh, you should be doing this and you should never. Like, I bet if we dug a little bit, sometimes you'll find that you struggled with that same thing. So sometimes that same thing for one person would provide them more empathy. Another would provide that same person more judgment. And sometimes the struggle is, or where we are on our soapboxes, is things that we're still struggling with. So I always think about three different camps. When you have people with really strong opinions about things,
Mhm.
how are you going to use those strong opinions to help people to have empathy for them, as a judgment tool, or as an opportunity for you to go, you know what, I have really strong feelings about that. I wonder if I've not processed that, and maybe I need to see that through. So I feel like we, again, in these spaces, have to be open to many different thoughts about where we're placing our judgment, where we're giving our empathy. Sometimes it's too much empathy because it's like, well, this is my struggle, so like I really understand that this is yours too, so I'm going to give you like a real good pass for it,
Right. And it's okay to stay there.
yeah, stay
Yes. Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there because
Right.
I'm right there.
Right. Right.
And so I feel like absolutely, faith based, any base. I think again, I
Yeah.
always say, Teresa, and I understand what you're saying in terms of where you are, as well in terms of the work that you do. But I feel like it's human. Like it's a human. Like you may have a person that has no faith base at all, but has so much empathy for another human because they've
Yeah.
experienced a similar thing,
Right.
or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just feel like it comes back
Yeah.
down to a self-awareness of where you are
Mhm.
in those spaces, especially if you're working in those spaces, and being willing to assess, where is this coming from? And am I giving
Yeah.
what is needed to that person? And then sometimes what I have discovered that I now need.
Yeah, amen. I actually tell people, if you find yourself really really hard on a specific thing, which I've been there before. I have been there
Me
where I
too.
was just like, "Ugh," this thing, and it was very, I was very harsh. And then until you realize how much grace you need for yourself,
Mhm.
and how much you're going to need to be able to, how much the power of God to really get you through something, then you go, oh, maybe. So I tell my people now, if you tell me never, that would never happen to you, I always say, then pray. Ask the Lord, say, test my never and
Mm,
let's see where it goes.
no, 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 no,
Everybody will
no,
back
no,
up. There.
no. We're not doing that. Don't test it.
Test my never. Never? Test it, Lord. Go ahead, test it. And listen, everybody shuts down. They're like, no,
Mhm.
of course, because you're not that secure
Mm,
from being broken, from breaking
mhm.
others,
Yeah.
from being somebody who actually does have dysfunction in your home. When you think your home is perfect, everything looks right, everything looks well, and it could be you. It could be you. And so, and that's my message really to those who are watching right now, whether you're a counselor, a parent, a teacher, somewhere in law enforcement, anybody that has to hear about trauma, brokenness, deal with children, anything of that nature, there is a need for empathy for your own life. You
Mm,
have to have that, or you will never give yourself permission to feel that and heal that.
mm,
You have to go through that. We are spirit, soul, and body, and it's for a reason. We are supposed to heal the things in the soul. And so, and everybody else around you will thank you for it. Is that right, Dr. Joy?
I'm telling you, I'm serious. And one of the things, I love that. I totally agree with you on that. One of the things that has been, and I would love to get your thoughts on this, as I'm in different spaces with different people, similarly different. But this is what I found, which is just, I'm kind of mad about this, Teresa. And I'm like, I'm going to talk to the counselor right now about this right now. But when I talk with, women and leaders that are in my, in my space, or I'm, doing the things that I'm doing, you know what I found, Teresa, that no one told me? A lot of them they have therapy every week. They have
Mm.
business coaches, life coaches, money
Mhm.
coaches, coaches to help them raise their kids. Like, I'm just like,
Yeah.
wait a minute here. I've been over here like, I'm every woman. And,
You and we are, okay? Can we just say we are?
like we
No,
are that,
that's right.
God,
Yeah,
God bless Whitney Houston. We are every woman.
yeah.
However, I'm looking at a lot of every women who have 6 people behind them, in terms of the support, whether it's strategy or it's therapy or whatever the case is.
Mhm.
That's how they're able to move to those higher levels and stay
That's
sane,
right.
right? Like, so
Yes.
yeah. What do you think about that, Teresa? Like, oh, like there's
I Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was actually thinking about that this morning. So I do coaching, right? And so and I've done counseling for years. And let me just explain the difference real quick in case so our viewers know. As a coach, I may not necessarily dig into all your past, right? I'm going to try to work on the now. What are your goals, right? And I know you know that as well, Dr. Bell.
yes,
But
ma'am.
then when it comes to counseling, I'm going to start digging. And don't get me wrong, I'm very discerning. So even when I'm coaching you, I'm going to pull some out. But I'm not going to sit there and say, "Tell me about the so and so," right? I'm going to say, "All right, what are your goals? What are some steps, etc." But I was thinking about that this morning because even in business, so like I do different areas. You do a lot of the educational, the whole house, the whole, which is so important. But for me, I love the leadership. I love the media. I love that. And I was thinking, even for myself, I've used a coach before,
Mhm.
and she was actually able to help me, and counseling, but she was able to help me with the the stuff of my life, the personal stuff. But she was a diverse coach, and so she was also able to help me with some business stuff. And people are gifted in that way. Yes, I know. I mean, I don't know about 6 of them, but start with 1 or 2. We need it. We really do need it because those are the gifts that we have been freely given by God, and we're supposed to be one another's support. There are people in your circle that could empower you, and of course, I mean, they need to be people with wisdom, with some training, some wisdom, etc. But yes, I'm all about that, and I think that as time progresses, that idea that's almost like that's for people who've got problems.
Mhm.
Now it's like, okay, if I don't, and this was my thought this morning, if I invest in this for the sake of my business, I am taking less risk by investing now in this, because if I don't,
Yeah.
it'll cost me more in the long run because I'll delay the advancement that I could have. And this is what I tell people: if you come to see me, or if people come to see you, you could actually you might be able to settle some of these things
Mhm.
so much more quickly,
Yeah.
and be able to enjoy life once again,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the healer and getting the guidance that you need in this role, especially which is prone to burnout. And it's just one of those roles. Like, I'm not a computer analyst where the keys are
Yeah.
not going to burn me out here. But the roles where you're dealing a lot with humans, it's just prone to that. And so one of the ways that I look at, whether it's therapy or any type of coaching, is that it collapses time for you. Any sort of role where you have a counselor, a coach, whatever, that you take all of their years of experience and mistakes and wins, and you're getting that from them, and it collapses the time and the learning curve for you
Mhm.
as a human. So it's like
That's
whenever
right.
you read a book about whatever the topic is, you're like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
could do this. Well, that person, it may have taken them 30 years to
Yes.
to have that knowledge. So having support, as a healer, is really a good thing because it collapses time. You can take a person who's done what you've done or gone further than you have. Don't be jealous of them. I'm like, I sure do wish I had what you had. Listen, get you some help and collapse time in the
That's
areas that
right.
you know that you need, and then
That's right.
watch the longevity. and the
That's
opportunity
right.
for the gifts that you have to stay with you for longer than just I'm counting down to retirement. Like, when is it that I don't have to do this anymore?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, I love your realness, right? Because I do the same thing. I'll just like pretend I'm talking like somebody else while I'm preaching, by the way. And I'll just be like, sorry, guys. Sorry, I was too real right there. I'm sorry. Because I'll be just like, wait, 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 because people are whining, something like that. And then I just got to catch myself on this. I want to talk about burnout, because you said something about burnout. And we have got to recognize the burnout.
Mm.
And it's not always just that you're dissatisfied with life.
Mhm.
For me, I'll speak about how I've recognized burnout, and then Dr. Joy, you can share your thoughts.
Sure.
But for me, burnout, this is so I have a grace to do a lot, and I say this all the time, and I know you do too. It's not just a personality type, it's a grace. There's a lot of people who have this personality
Mhm.
but don't have the grace. So I tell people, because a lot of people say, you've got to rest. You've got to rest. Hello, Miss Bernice. Bless you, honey. Thank you so much for watching. And those of you who are watching, go ahead and post your questions here if you would like, or if you have some comments, something that's changing your life, your perspective, let us know. We want to be encouraged by this, because this is something we've been wanting to bring to you guys. So so a lot of people say, you need some rest, you need some rest. And I say, if you're tired,
Mhm.
you sit down.
Mhm.
I am grown, and I know when I'm tired, because my soul
Mhm.
will feel like I cannot do it anymore. And one of the ways that I know it, and you're going to laugh because this goes right with you.
There we go.
I can't come to the office.
Mhm.
My soul's like, nope, girl, we are not going there today. You are not touching that place. You are not going in that place until I say so. And I'm like, aye, Captain.
Yeah.
Because guess what? My soul's saying,
Yeah.
you've done enough.
Yeah.
And now it's time to back away and do something different. Not just rest, by
Yeah.
the way,
Yeah.
play. I have
Mhm.
to learn to play, because I want to work. Do you understand? I love to work, and I just want to work. And I have to rebuke myself and say, go play.
I love that you said that. And I think just as a touch a little bit to back, I totally agree with you on that. Even play, when I think about like sort of my growing up in my years, I was always like my older sister says I was a middle older child. So like a
Mm.
sister mother feel, about me. And so when I think about play, I'm like, that's what lazy people do. Like lazy people, like we didn't take vacations as with my own family to like a couple of years ago. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a thing. Like you can get rejuvenated and all the things. But play is a foreign thing to me. So now in my older years, like I intentionally embed that into my
Yeah.
life. And I find just like you would have a vacation, when you come back, you're more creative, you're more alive, you have more to
Yes.
give, right? So, but that's something that I sort of brought in on my souls a little bit. And so now I have to undo it. Now, like Teresa, here, can we just be with each other? Because that's what we do
Of course. That's what
here.
we do.
Right. I think some people at this stage of life, they used to say, that men, they would always refer to men. I don't know why women, but now I think women fall there, that they were having like midlife crisis, and then, they'd throw
Yeah.
away the family, get a new car, like, just, go somewhere, just goofy things.
Mhm.
It's not, I think, I don't know if I believe in a midlife crisis. I think that
Mm.
we so often find ourselves in a space where we knew we should have been doing that thing all along, but for maybe prestige or for appeasing our parents or whatever the case is, we didn't do
Yeah.
it. So we get kind of to the middle and we're like, you know what? I want to have a Maserati.
Yeah.
But wait, you have 2 kids, a wife, a mortgage, whatever. So I say that to say that even though play is now a part of my life, probably needs to be elevated a little bit more, that doesn't relieve us as humans of the responsibilities that we have.
Of
So
course.
we can recognize as healers, as humans, I may not have had this when I was growing up. I want to have more of this now, but that doesn't absorb us of our responsibilities as adults. You can adult and play. You can adult and pay the mortgage. You can adult and keep the minivan and
Yeah.
get the Maserati when the kids go to college. After college, you can still do the thing. So I
Yes.
think that I say this to say that it's important not to be irresponsible in the healing. So you
Yeah.
may,
Yeah.
in the healing process, realize a lot of things, but that
Mhm.
doesn't absorb you of just the basic human, responsibilities and element, especially if you're tied to other people, wives, husbands, children, churches,
Yeah.
your work. So that kind of thing. That's my little spin on that. Find what needs to be healed, work on it, but don't use it as an excuse to be irresponsible in your life.
Yes, and I will give the opposite side of that as well, because I think that there are people who are so used to controlling their every little second and their every little move that this sounds threatening to their control system,
Mm,
right? Like, let's just be honest, they are like, but if I do this, I won't accomplish this and I won't accomplish that. Listen, I have to self counsel and self minister to myself oftentimes, because I'm so used to, check, 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 check. And oh, this feels so good to my soul because I'm accomplishing and I'm an accomplisher. And I'm just like, step back, go
mhm,
spend some time praying, because that is going to, and don't get me wrong, for me, my lifestyle is praying, but that set apart time,
mm,
the
mhm,
time that you just go, the world is not going to fall apart
mhm.
if you don't go do this right now. And that's the same for anybody else. You don't have to be in the faith field. You could be in any field and just need that set apart time, such as taking a walk, such as taking a bath, going to get a little ice cream in the car by yourself without having to share it with anybody. It's just for you, I
Watching a
mean,
new Netflix series, like, and just watching it and just binging one day. I mean, that's not
oh
me. That's
goodness.
not me.
Okay, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet, Dr. Brown. I still can't sit down and just spend my time doing that yet. Like,
Woo! I can help
man,
help you with that part. I can
you can help me with that. I'll come downstairs and let you just help me out there for a little bit. Yeah, I still have a problem with that. But for all you other people who love your little series, go ahead. Like, if that's what brings you pleasure, I would rather go for a run, or
yeah,
something like that. Like, I've got my thing. And so remember to
yeah.
play responsibly. But for those of you who have an issue, some of you are like, maybe you need a little more responsibility under your belt, and some of you need to let go and say, it's okay, because burnout looks like your soul saying no more,
Mhm,
tiredness,
mhm.
fatigue, not sleeping well, staying up in the middle of the night,
Yeah.
right? Your brain's just going, not feeling satisfied with the things that you used to find pleasure in. And do you want to add a few more?
Yeah, I think one of the things I loved, I'll use myself as the example here when I talk with my therapist and she's just fun. And I'm like, how can I be like, woman, hear me roar and not have all this angst? And like, how do I do that? Because I still like, I'm like you want to achieve, you want to be there for people, but that high level is a recipe for burnout. And I'm like, there are people that like accomplish things and they're like they're at ease doing it. Like, give me that book, right? And so, it is possible. But burnout, I love what you said. I've had a couple times in my life that it was sort of like, I didn't want to do the thing that I love the most. And I remember specifically a decade ago, I was a principal somewhere, and I would be so happy when there was like a snow day or like we could cancel school. I was like, children, I think I see the size of a man's hand that there might be hail. So we're gonna be off for the next three
Yeah.
days. And I remember thinking
Wow.
after a couple of times of that, like, why? Why was that? Well, that was at a time when I was, 9 and nothing, didn't have a lot of, a team support there, waking up in the
Mhm.
middle of the night trying to get things done that I couldn't get done during the day because everybody needed me, right? So I was always looking for relief. And so for me, that's always, even now, a sign. If it's like, man, I really love this. Why am I glad when this is canceled? Why am I
Mhm.
like shouting and like thank you, bringing the
That's good.
popcorn and let's go to the movies? And I love
Mhm.
this thing. That's for
Yeah.
me, burnout shows up that way, or one of the ways that it shows up. But I,
Mhm.
I, I laugh now because one of my relatives was at the school at the time. She's like, you'd be like, guess what, everybody? We got a rainstorm. We
Yeah,
can't come for 4 days.
that's
So,
right, right. Yeah,
and as the leader, like that's not what you want, right? Like why,
right, right.
but that was my way of getting rest. Right. That was the like a
Yeah,
built-in way of like having an excuse, like I can't come. So I can get
right.
some rest. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
I think that's important, and realizing what burnout can look like. I think it's a layered little cookie burnout,
yeah.
because people always think you're just doing nothing, but it can be in
Mhm.
motivation, it can be in excess. I think about it, and I'm going to steal
Yes.
your terms, Teresa. It's like an emotional dysregulation that happens
Mhm. Yeah.
for that person. So some people, when they're emotionally dysregulated, they do nothing. Some people, when they spend a lot on Amazon. Some, when they
Yes,
dysregulate, they start, they just do all sorts of things. So
that's right.
I think it's for the healer to understand. It's like, okay, what am I doing more of that's not healthy, that's not
Mhm.
moving the needle, that's like, and so maybe I'm dysregulated
Yeah,
in some way, and I have to figure that out so that I don't
right.
stop altogether.
That's right. And avoiding people that definitely, like if you're in the healing call and you're just like, not answering, not scheduling, not returning calls. Now, listen, there are boundaries that are necessary. So for me, I mean, I've been in ministry for years, and in counseling and coaching. So I already understand human behavior very well. I watch it very, very well. And there are people who just take. You must. And by the way, this is one way to heal the healer. Set up some boundaries. Sometimes people think, oh, I have boundaries. No, you don't. I remember somebody told me, I was like, years ago, right? Like, why do they do this? Why do they? And they turned to me and they said, because you don't have boundaries. And I'm like, excuse me? You're talking to the counselor preacher here? Excuse me? What do you mean I don't have boundaries? And I was like, oh, they're so right. I don't have boundaries. And so I started to understand, first of all, what do boundaries mean? Because if I don't know what a boundary is, I'm not going to assert it. So I have to define a boundary. And for me personally, a boundary is I set the time when I will be accessible. I set the time for how long I'm going to be accessible. I set the topic of what we're going to be, what I'm going to let you access out of me, right? And I determine that in many different ways. Are people committed? Are they willing to invest? Are they faithful? And so many other things. Is this a God appointment? Because there are some times when I'm just, they're heaven's assignments and I have to answer, right? But I'm not going to do that for everybody. So I had to define my own boundaries. Excuse me, but I had to be honest and say, but I don't have a whole lot of boundaries. I may have some, but I don't have enough to secure my wholeness, because I will be forever serving people as far as I know, right? Unless I'm moved into a different position, which could happen. But I love helping people. So I don't know, but anything could happen. So you have to secure your boundaries. And I have to ask those of you who are watching, those of you who are going to watch, what are your boundaries? What do you identify as boundaries? And are they being implemented? And are they being followed? Because some of you go, okay, I'm going to put this boundary. And then here comes little Miss Take a Lot. And you're like, oh, well, she needed me. And can I just be honest? Sometimes, guys, we have this, like, it's like something that it does for us. Can we just be real? You feel like you're so valuable and needed. But I got to help, and I got to preach, and I got to minister, and I got to whatever. And that's about you, because I've been there. I don't know about you, but
no, that is so good. When we're thinking about healing, I'm going to piggyback on your conversation about boundaries. Sometimes we don't set boundaries because we're gaining value, like self-worth, from the role, which wasn't designed. That's not what it's designed. You want to be excited that you've helped someone, but now it's like, no, I'm a good person. I'm a great this. I'm a great. No, that's somewhere else. You got to get that somewhere else, because if you don't, then you're like boundaries. I like. What did you say, Miss Take a Lot? I love that.
Miss Take a Lot. There's always a little Miss Take a Lot somewhere.
There's always some Mr. Takes a Lot too.
That's true.
Yeah. So I think that's so good, because when you're thinking about the healer and you're like, oh no, I don't have any boundaries. Call me anytime. Call me in the middle of the night. Call me whenever you want to. Like, you call me in the middle of the night, you're gonna get notification. Like that's
why my phone is on silent, baby, in the middle of the night. Yes, ma'am.
It's not gonna happen. And those of you who are listening who used to work under my tutelage, you're like, this is the person who texts us in the middle, like emailing. I'm a changed person. Like,
you are delivered.
I am delivered. So I like so I don't want you putting something there like, oh, but she telling the truth.
Right.
I was a different person like that. So you really have to be able to. I think that's a part of the healing. The boundaries, not gaining your self-worth from your work and from your gifts, and all of those things helps the healer. So good.
That's right. Yeah, this is good. And then I want to talk about one last thing, and then we're going to wrap up, because we've had so much fun. We've been just going at this topic. I've been wanting to take care of this topic for a while. I love politics, but I was like, I got to deal with this, because this is one of those things that I love, because this is real. It's part of my world.
Yes.
The quality of your counselor.
Ooh.
So, and this is kind of one of those, it could almost be a controversial topic, because people define a quality of a counselor differently. For instance, coming from the faith-based group, most faith-based people will tell you, make sure that you find somebody who really does adhere to the Word of God, and they're not teaching you the ways of culture and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. But I have actually heard of and dealt with people who are recovering from people who adhere to those very principles that I do also,
Mhm.
but they also damaged people because they were messed up in other areas and counseling in ways that actually incurred more pain
Mhm.
instead of setting them free.
Mhm.
So I personally, based on who you get to help you, coach, counselor, etc., I will always want to know, if you're going to speak into my life, I need to know you align up with me, with my values
Sure.
100%. And especially if you're going to talk to me about anything spiritual, right? Like
Mhm.
that's my guard, that's my boundary. And
Mhm.
so, me personally, I tell people, if you're going to look for somebody, ask them. Don't be afraid to email and call or text and say, can you tell me what you're, how you line up on these issues, these
Mhm.
particular issues, right? Let's say, and you can speak into this, but let's just take a parenting style. You may be the type that says, no, we're going to love through it. We're going to communicate through it. And then the other another counselor will be like, whoop their butts. We're going to take care of this right now. Now, I'm in between both of those. You know
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying? But what do you say to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. And for in my role specifically, and I want to go back to the how I determine, and how I advise people to get support and get help. Um, you need to know, which is why I have families fill out a really detailed intake form, because my bent is I have a certain lens that I use,
Mhm.
right? So yes, I believe in academics, clearly I do, but at the end of the day, I'm like, what about the soul of that child? How
Mhm.
they're going to get where they're going to get, but how they get there is more important to me. So, I'm
Mhm.
not going to say, oh, I need you to have an A by the end. No, no, no. What's happening and why this is not working? That's what I want to know
That's good.
first. So if you're a person that's like, you know what, I want you to come in and write this ship in 30 days or less, and you make sure that you get, no, 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 no. I will write the ship. It won't be in 30 days or less, and it's going to be from a heart posture of
Mhm.
understanding all of the pieces that are there. And so, there have been families, every now and then, because that's the part of the boundaries, like, you know what, they said this, but I think I probably can still, like, I can win them over like my way. It never goes well, right? Because
Yeah.
the heart of that person it's not that it's bad or not. It's different. It's a different
Right.
lens. So I would piggyback in terms of the healer getting help. Absolutely. Like I had a lot of different, I'm gonna say a lot of different because I did have a lot of therapy, but a lot of different people. And they were like, I had some therapists that were like, oh my gosh, that's so me. Let me tell you about what happened to me. I'm like, listen, this $30 copay is not for you. You have to take and share
Thank you.
your pain over with your therapist, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's a line with that, because I have really great therapists, and like there'll be a really great opportunity to share a shared experience, but it's not shared from a position of, I'm still working through this, and I'm using this time to tell you. It's like,
Right.
I get what you're saying. Let me tell you how I have a great example of that and how I work through that. I love
Right.
that any day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely, I think if you find, some people have a gender specific. I've had males,
Correct.
I have females. I've had females that are like that, feel like really like a type, like, like, girl, duh. I'm like, I thought I was coming here for gentle, like
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
gentle. No, that's another one. So even their style, like, if they're some therapists and healers, they're like, Teresa, what do you think? And this is what I wanted. This is what's in my head. Do you remember the show Ally McBeal? Do you remember Ally McBeal?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I
So
do.
in Ally McBeal, they would be at the business table at work, and you could see a
Mhm.
bubble over their head when certain people would do certain things, and but they didn't say it, but they were thinking it. So when someone says, "Well, what do you think?" I'm like, and the bubble is like, "If I knew, I would not be here," because like,
Yes.
I just that's
Yeah.
what I think. You know what I mean?
That's a technique, though. Believe it or not, that is a counseling technique. Which I was like, throw that out the window. We don't need that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm okay with it
Mhm.
sometimes, because at some point in counseling, this, Teresa.
Reflection. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like you've given the person like 3 years of your life, and they're asking the same question they asked you in the first day. You're like, now, come on. Like, what do
Mhm.
you have enough data and information to make a decision, use it.
That's
But if
right.
you're just coming in and dealing with something at a new space, you don't know. And now with ChatGPT, everybody thinks they know everything. You just Siri or ChatGPT it. But you don't know. So I don't like counselors that are always asking me what I think, because it's
Mm.
for me, it's like it's akin to a patient with symptoms going into a doctor professional who spent decades in school and saying, what labs do you think we should order for you? Like, that's the way it feels
Mhm.
to me. So, but that's me, right? So you
Right.
share some of the things that are your lenses. For me, I have mine. So, but sometimes if you don't have them, you're going to figure them out pretty quickly. And so I would just say, if you get there, you don't like, I don't really know what to ask, or I don't even really know what I'm looking for. Your
Mhm.
gut's going to tell you, like, we've been doing this for 19 years with this one person, and I'm still
That's
struggling
right.
with the same issue. This is not your person, right? So, but that's sort of how to answer your question, to what my guidance, like, make sure they have similar, because Teresa, this counseling in any form is, you're vulnerable.
Yes.
So you don't want someone like at that vulnerable time. I call it, there's a book that I read all the time called Broken Open. So
Mhm.
with Elizabeth Lesser, so when you go in these spaces, you're broken open, and you're vulnerable. So you're susceptible to a lot of thought. And if you have a strong person
Yeah.
talking, you're like, yeah, I never thought I would do that anyway. I didn't want
Mhm.
to be married anyway. I'm divorcing my spouse tomorrow. No, 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 no,
Mhm.
no, no. So you
Yeah.
want to make sure that you recognize that you're in this broken open season, and so who you're allowing to speak in your life it's like a sacred time. What do you think, Teresa?
It is it is very sacred, and I was thinking about that because I've been in the room with a counselor before where she has made a lot of sense, and then there was times when I wanted to stick a sock in her mouth, and I'm like, "Ugh, you are not right on this one," and so then that's real. Can we just
Mhm,
talk honestly about that? I mean, I've been counseling. I have counseled hundreds of people, I
mhm,
promise, and I promise at some point somebody was like rolling their eyes at me. It's surely at some point somebody did, right? But and you know what's funny is that as forward, because I am that leader, that I'm like, oh, we're gonna conquer, we're gonna do, get up. But when it comes to counseling, I'm very compassionate. Like I'm
mhm,
just like soften. I can become soft. I won't let you compromise, but I
mhm,
will, but I will become very soft
mhm,
because that is the place where people's hearts are very vulnerable. And
mhm,
so for me, I do want a counselor. And here's another thing. If you find yourself with people who maybe, and I've had this happen, I've had people come talk to me because they went to see another counselor or their pastor
mhm,
and they've gotten some kind of advice and they're like, but it doesn't sit right with me. Now,
mhm,
there are two different types of people, the kind that just want to hear what they want to hear and the kind that are really wrestling with the values of, is this really truly it? One example that I have is this is a very controversial one in the church, divorce in the church because
mhm,
of abuse in marriages, right? There are so many people who are just like, stick with it, stay there, do. And then there's people who are like, you've got to go for the
mhm,
sake of you and your children. Right. And so I've had people come to me and ask, what do you think? What would you have done? And I tell them based on my ideas, I would say, this is how I would do it, but this is me.
mhm,
What is important to you? Right. So, like, I'm not trying to not answer the question, but I don't want you to come back and say, you know what? She told me to pack up and leave your little behind. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
and there might be a time when I will have to say that if your life is at risk, guess what? Yeah, you got to go. You got to keep yourself together. But so that's very, very important. But sometimes you might find that you will have to find a different counselor or pastor who's counseling you, and that's okay. It
Mhm,
is okay. I would rather you leave and not give up, because a lot of times some people who are in the healing business break you,
mhm,
and they were supposed to help you. And this goes for even us who are in the healing field. Like,
mhm,
we have to be very aware that we may not find that person that we need.
mhm,
So we have to use our own experiences as people who are in the healing field to say, okay, what would I have said to that client? Would
mhm,
I have said, leave, don't come back, don't, give up, whatever? But you need a support system. If you are in any kind of healing field, my question would be, who is your support
mhm,
system? Who are you downloading with
mhm,
um, in real life
mhm,
on some of your stuff? Like, you have to find, let me just say this, anybody in the healing business, whether you're a counselor, pastor, a law enforcement person, anybody who hears any kind of brokenness of people, watches it with their eyes, whether you're a teacher, etc., and you don't have a support system in your life, you are set up. It's not safe for your well-being.
mhm,
And so if you don't have one, you may want to start considering that and considering it pretty fast. What do you think, Dr. Bell?
No, I do. Listen, I almost think about it like if you're bleeding, if you've had a cut and you're like, and there's like blood pour. If someone walked into a room and they had a cut and was bleeding, like, no, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, and they're bleeding all over the carpet and bleeding on the computer. If you don't figure out as the healer that I may not know all that I'm bleeding from or all that has impacted me, but I can see evidence that I'm not quite ready to be. I think it's irresponsible. I do to say that, no, I'm good, because you're bleeding on your marriage, you're bleeding on the kids, you're bleeding on the children. If you're a teacher, you're bleeding on your clients, whatever. It's coming out in some way. Maybe you're bleeding in your tone or in your judgment. So I think it is a responsible decision to make sure that you have the care as the healer so that you can deal with, manage, make peace with your own things, and so that you can be a better equipped to support at a high level.
That's right. Wow, wow, wow. We have covered so much ground in 1 hour. Wow, we did it. Hey, this is like as long as a session usually,
It
1
is,
hour.
yeah, it
And
is.
you just got a whole hour free of amazing opportunities to grow and to learn and to get in touch with how you can heal. If you're in the healing business, guys, whichever way that is, whichever role that may be, whether you're licensed or not, I realize that there's some license requirements. Listen, not everybody who helps and to help others heal is licensed. Some people do it from different perspectives and different places. And if you are in any way helping people, empowering people, helping them get their lives back together, you have got to have some empathy on yourself and know that it's okay to heal and that it's okay when you bleed. It's okay when you are bleeding. Somebody has to tell you, we care about you. Dr. Bell and I care about you enough to say you deserve to be able to depend on somebody else. I depend on somebody else. As strong as I am, I have several people that you're one of them, Dr. Bell. I just will sit there and talk to you and be honest with you. And, I was a little too transparent real quickly. I was like, hey, well, whatever, we're out there and talking, but you know what? That's okay, because I knew that you were equipped for it and could handle it. And you had a friendship part to it. It was friendship and it was professionalism. And sometimes a 5-minute conversation can bring a breath of fresh air into your life.
Absolutely.
So we want to encourage you, as you have joined myself and Dr. Bell here, that it's time to heal. If you're in the healing services, start reaching out to people, build up your network of people that could support you, encourage you. And listen, not everything is free. Sometimes you have to invest. And can I tell you that one of our biggest issues is that we'll spend money on our hair, on our nails, on our sports, on our this, on our that. But the very thing that could actually advance your life, we think that that's almost like it's an expense rather than an investment, right? So we want to make sure that you do that. Any last words, Dr. Bell, before I close this up?
Yeah, I think this is such, I love what you said a couple, I was going to say minutes ago, but I feel like it's days because we've been here together so long. But I feel like you have to recognize that this space, people who are in this space in whatever way you frame it, whatever the title is, it's a calling. It's a gift, but it also requires self-care. Right. You can be called to something and still burn out. You can be called to something and still not want to do it ever again.
Right.
Ask a lot of those people around you that you see that were really great. And they're like, I don't even want to talk about that thing anymore. I don't want to ever want to do that again. How did they get there? There's some great wisdom people too. It's like, well, here's what happened. I want to make sure that I get some guidance before. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I also love what you said about him. Whenever I talk about families when they work with me, that this is an investment, right? A lot of times it's like, well, I don't know if I want to do this. Well, you have to think about what's going to happen if you don't. And I think a lot of times we think about, I don't want to do this. I don't want to pay for this. But we kind of already have evidence of what happens if you don't, or what could happen if you delay it. So investments are really, I think, also a level of self-care that you're, whether it's for yourself or your family, that I don't know everything. And there's so many things. Please don't tell my teenagers this, Ms. Teresa Lusk, but I don't know everything. And so in the spaces that I don't know, I'm willing to collapse time and make that investment. But I did want to share, we're going to have a few live events this year with, and they're titled Broken Open. And really it's an opportunity for parents to come in. I'm going to have small groups of about 15 parents. I'm going to help you if you have kids with ADHD and you're like, you know what? I don't really have, the funds for a big investment, but I do have, $175 for a 4 hour, Saturday, then join me. I'm going to have that information on my website. And so I'd love to have you there. There's something about community. That's what Teresa and I are talking about, that we're not designed as humans to live life alone. And sometimes just hearing another parent say, oh my gosh, you too? Like, what did you do? It strengthens you. So I would love, to provide that information to families. We're going to have it over the next few months, and just come together. So I'll get to meet you. You'll get to meet me. We'll get to meet each other.
That's right. And what's your website?
Yep. The website is www.launchandthrivefamily.com. That is the name of the website. So they can go there. They can book a call with me. I have a separate link, Teresa, for the live events that I can share with you, so that the families can go there if they're interested in exploring that. But yeah, jump on a call with me. I'd love to talk with you about it. But those live events are going to be so good, and we'll have some good snacks, because I'm kind of like a snack girl.
There you go. We'll have we got to eat. We got to eat. It's important to just to wrap this up pretty quickly. It is important to, when you hear other people say, I'm going through that, it's a relief. I cannot tell you how many times I've been set free by just hearing somebody say, actually, I've been there. I know exactly what it feels. And these are the symptoms. And this is what, okay, somebody else is with me. They get it. It's not just me being alone in this boat, kind of thing.
Teresa, you're trying to wrap this up. This is not going to happen. And what it does is it gives you hope. Like when you see someone, a lot of times when I'm with families and they're with another family, for example, maybe they have college kids, and there's another family, and they're like with a fifth grade, they're like, am I gonna make it? And they're like, yes, you will. And let me show you how. So it gives hope. It gives encouragement before you even have a solution, because you can see someone on the other side that's gone through the tunnel that you're going. Now, Teresa, don't ask me any more questions, because we're never going to finish this up.
We're not going to. Well, I'm trying to not mention the next thing in my head, because I'm like, that's a whole nother session. But we're going to leave you with this, okay? I'm going to close it, but here's what we're going to do. Dr. Bell is going to come back, and we're going to talk about your culture and how that keeps you from wanting to reach out to healers, because obviously you have an African-American woman here, you have a Latina woman, and in our culture, this not something that was celebrated or encouraged. Okay. It's almost a joke to a lot of cultures. And that may have been something that kept you from healing. But I promise you, we will bring that back, because that's going to be such a good session here. So God bless you guys. Remember, I do the same thing. I coach and I counsel. I love to deal with people who are ready to that's like, wrap it up, sister. I want to deal with people who are definitely ready. That doesn't mean that you come in with the answers. It just means you come ready to be open and vulnerable and honest, because a lot of times people in counseling, they're not always honest because of shame. And then, so we've got to be ready to be honest. So if that's the counseling part you need, send me a message through the social media pages. Also coach. I love coaching in leadership. I actually have a writer's workshop coming up, Dr. Bell, to help people. It's a whole different type of workshop. It's not your typical stuff. I will pull it out of you. You will learn to write like you and love it, and just tap into your giftings, and also media. That's my thing. So we each have our own worlds, our own lanes, but we're here to help everybody. So please be sure to reach out to Dr. Bell. You should be able to find her on our social media page, because we did tag her. Although, Dr. Bell, I would encourage you to go to our social media page and type in your link in there. Just type it in for us, so that they can also just click on your name and follow you. And so we're here to help you. We had so much fun. Thank you so much, Dr. Bell, for being willing and for being vulnerable. Because listen, we sat here and we told you a lot of our secrets about healing and what it looks like, and some of the tears we've cried, and so all that. So God bless you guys. We love you, and we can't wait to see you again soon. Take care. Thank you so much, Dr. Bell. God bless.
Thank you for